Hi, Emma.
Hello, Dr. Alexis. How are you?
It's so nice to see you again. I had a lot of fun during our Instagram live that we did together.
Listen, if you're not having fun, you're doing something wrong. That's how I feel.
I totally agree.
And in play. There we go.
We had an opportunity on Instagram Live to talk more about like mental health and wellness. And today we're going to be diving in specifically to teens, to youth empowerment through songwriting.
Yes. Which is my love language. I'm not going to lie.
Me too.
Welcome to Wit and Reason, hosted by psychologist Dr. Alexis Moreno. Dr. Moreno brings her expertise to providing smart and practical explanations on human behavior. Listen now as Dr. Moreno brings a little bit of positive mental health to your day.
What are you observing now with today's teens?
So it's interesting because I grew up in another country, which is culturally very similar in many ways, but in a lot of other ways, it's not similar at all.
Yeah.
So it's if I was to look at the teenager from 2015, 2016, when I first moved to the States, the teenager in New Zealand, a lot of what I was working with back then were young people who were still grappling with social media. Again, this was 7 years ago, though, so that was like Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah.
We didn't have the influence yet of TikTok or Reels or LinkedIn. I don't know if not LinkedIn. What's that? The Be Real, app that's just come out. We weren't so trying to grapple with those new things.
Mm-hmm.
But the 2015, 2016 teenager, I think a big part of the struggle for them was the dramatic shift that the technology era has introduced into the world and in society, to the point where parents are no longer able to reach their kids as easily as they once might have been able to. And because of that, there's like this cognitive dissonance more so than in previous generations, where we're not able to like connect as easily or even understand, because the algorithms that your 13-year-old's TikTok is showing them is vastly different from the algorithms that you're getting, right? And so there's a lot of presumptions that are made. There's a lot of fear-based media that gets pushed down our throats through these social media, formats, as well as through just normal everyday media. So that's part of it. Living in the States now, however, it's a whole new breed of teenager that I grew up with, because, while New Zealand is incredibly diverse with Pacifica and Southeast Asia, here in the States, we have, especially in DC, we have a huge Hispanic population, Ethiopian, Eritrea, Black American, white, whatever breed of white you might be or ascribe to, that there's just further complications. And I think to take that even one step further, it's not just about race, it's also about systemic issues and about economic disparities and inequalities that I just didn't, again, grow up with. So the teenager in Washington, D.C., for example, can be very different if you were in Southeast compared to if you're living in Palisades. They're just completely different human beings. And therefore, they have different types of trauma. Now, that's really key, because I want to really hammer home that we all experience trauma, but we all also wear trauma differently.
Right.
So, like when you look at, a family who's a Black American family, for example, generally speaking, what you'll often see is turning to humor as a coping mechanism when it comes to anything negative or difficult to deal with. Whereas Other communities may not feel as comfortable to turn to that as a coping mechanism. So I think to go back to like the very simple crux of the answer to your question, the everyday teenager in the United States wears trauma very differently depending on where they are, but that's not the focus. The focus that I want to make is that because we all wear trauma differently, we need to respond to each trauma uniquely and differently, looking at the teenagers for where they are, who they are, and how they show up, not at the actual symptom of trauma.
Right, exactly. And what you do in your work, songwriting to empower youth, is a very unique type of strategy and intervention and response really to trying to work with youth. And so I'm curious, what is that process like for you when you are working with youth, especially those who are presenting with some form of trauma response? How do you navigate that with them, and what's your approach?
So the first thing is like, it's a judgment-free zone, right? Art is art, and it's beautiful, and it's expressive, and it's honest, and it's authentic, and it's vulnerable. And so it's really important for me to honor that vulnerability and honor that authenticity without being aghast because, oh my goodness, you experienced this thing that I can't relate to. That's not helpful. Well,
yeah, that's way more isolating.
Right. So it's to go back to what I said before, is like, in order to effectively empower a young person or an adult for that matter, we need to look at the individual as an individual. And that's why songwriting can be so beautiful and unique, is because it's an authentic representation of the human.
Yeah.
But that authentic representation of my autonomy, my authenticity, my story, my being actually cross-relates to a whole range of other different humans. You think back to like, I don't know, when you were a teenager, any songs you used to listen to. I know that, for today's Adele songs, just hammer at the heartstrings. Break. What's his name? I just watched a film by him that I'm completely forgetting the name of. But what's his name? His name is he just put out a song called Intergalactic. Kid Cudi. When you look at people like Kid Cudi, where his music, his trauma, his stories are his, but they're able to be understood and digested by a variety of humans, whether or not you grew up in the streets of New York City or, in your healthy, quote unquote, healthy, two-person household, whatever that looks like, you know what I mean? So my approach is to help young people recognize the value of their stories, recognize that their uniqueness is part of their superpower. Their struggle is also part of their superpower. I mean, let's be real. Batman lost his parents before he became Batman. Right. Superman was sent to the earth because, his planet was exploding. Like, every superhero experiences trauma. Mm-hmm. So why don't we look at our own trauma as like the catalyst towards creating our theme song, creating our song of overcoming? And then who knows, maybe your Superman or Superwoman story will then, inspire other people in your realm to join forces with you, to be encouraged and to just support you. Because at the end of the day, music is a universal language that connects people.
And you have previous coaching client who did just that.
Yes.
You worked with this person to write the song and then all the way through to music video?
She was my second client. And we literally wrote a song a week for, 12 weeks. So we wrote an album together, which she actually recorded the album. And then from there, we took 2 of the songs and recorded them. We made music videos from them. And using the album and the music videos together, she was accepted into the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts to work with Paul McCartney and some other incredible professors over in Liverpool.
Wow.
Mud face, hard rain. Looks like I'm falling over again. Fighting dust, this sucks. Embarrassed, this has happened again. Sick of the words in my head. Can we forget what I said? Leave me alone, alone. I'm trying to vibe here. Passes already gone, already gone. Why you have to remind me? Leave me alone, alone. I'm trying to vibe here. Passes already gone, already gone. Why you have to remind me? No thoughts, just words. Here I go, I've done it again. Red cheeks, heartbeats. Embarrassed, this has happened again. Sick of the words in my head. Can we forget what I said? Leave me alone, alone. I'm trying to vibe here. The past is already gone, already gone. Why you have to remind me? Leave me alone, alone. I'm trying to vibe here. The past is already gone, already gone. Why you have to remind me? I'm sick of the intrusive thoughts. Don't wanna think about yesterday. I'm through with being haunted with embarrassment. I wanna push it away, push it away. Leave me alone, alone. I'm trying to vibe here. The past is already gone, already gone. Why you have to remind me? Leave me alone, alone. I'm trying to vibe here. The past is already gone, already gone. Why you have to remind me?
That's such beautiful work. And you're clearly passionate about working with youth. Both you and I bond over our values around prevention and trying to serve and support as many people as possible. That's such beautiful work. And you're clearly passionate about working with youth. What is it about teens that you feel so connected to the point where you want to dedicate your services and songwriting to working with them?
That's a great question. And I feel like I need to answer that in layers.
Yeah.
So my own personal story sort of began when I was super, super young. I had my first brain surgery when I was 4 months old. And by the time I was 10, I'd had 10 brain surgeries and 24 surgeries in total. But from my perspective, like music and songwriting was always that lens through which I could express myself and sort of overcome the adversity, sort of make sense of it and put words to it and things. But for my peers who hadn't really, well, none of my peers had had brain surgery, let's be real. Thankfully, they found it difficult to really understand that side of themselves. But it wasn't until, age 12, 11, 12, 13 that their kind of emotional wonkiness started showing up. I'd always had this emotional wonkiness, but, everybody else kind of caught up and started lashing out, expressing themselves in unhealthy ways around the age of 11, 12. Now, I need to preface that I am 34, and so I am a millennial, and I recognize as such that it's really easy to look at my age group and the age group of Generation Z as like they don't know any better. But let me be honest. The 11 and 12-year-olds that I was around when I was growing up, and it was still before social media, were still acting out in ways that were incredibly damaging and provocative. And, it's in ways that I think a lot of us try to pretend don't actually happen.
Right.
And I think it's only gotten worse to present day because of the advent of social media, et cetera, et cetera. However, so my own experiences watching my peers express themselves in unhealthy ways kind of led me to this point. But it wasn't actually until I was 19 when, by the age of 19, I'd already lost, some various people to unaliving themselves and to mental health issues and struggles, to drug overdoses, to health complications. A lot of trauma happens with our young people. And again, my peers did not have healthy ways of showing that. So I distinctly remember that when I was 19, when my at the time ex-boyfriend, I just received news that he'd unalived himself. That was when I was like, you know what? We're so focused on fixing problems that we don't look at the root cause of the problems.
Yeah.
And if the root cause starts at the age of 11 or 12, I want to do everything I can in my power. Again, I was 19 in New Zealand at the time. Didn't quite know what that would look like. But if I could do anything to help prevent that from happening again to anybody, I wanted to do that. At the time, I was a full-time, teacher and musician, vocal teacher and musician. So I like that was kind of the lens through which I wanted to do the work. But, now here we are in 2022 and things have changed and the world has changed and how I want to help has just evolved significantly. But the focus of looking at the root cause, teenagers and how we foster their mental health has never wavered.
You mentioned what you observed in your youth, especially as a millennial. That's so amazing. And it's such a unique approach too. And I'm wondering, like, when you work with youth, is it their parents that connect you? And then once you're sitting down with them, is this something that they're motivated and willing to do? Or does it take some buy-in for some of the teens you work with?
I get a lot of parents who come to me and then, really resonate with my story and what I do because they remember their teenage years and how difficult that was. And obviously looking at raising a teenager in the 20s, the roaring 20s,
right,
is difficult. So sometimes that happens and then it's a case of trying to figure out, okay, does this teenager actually feel comfortable with me? That's part of it. The other parts of it are, I often, teenagers I work with will introduce me to their friends or their friends will see the creations that they're making. And then be like, oh, I want to do that. That sounds cool, or rather that sounds dope.
I still think cool still.
Listen, it's an evolving language, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's part of it. In other rounds, I partner with an organization called Story Tapestries that also puts me in schools or in summer school camps or whatever to work with youth on a group level.
Yeah.
And so that's a whole different approach as well. And that is quite beautiful because it means that I get to access groups of kids at a time that may not otherwise be able to access exactly what it is that I do.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's all about helping young people to recognize the power of their voice and the importance of their voice and their story and how that actually can connect us as opposed to separate or ostracize us.
Yeah. And how long is a teen typically working with you?
So typically speaking, I have 6, 8, and 10-week programs.
Yeah.
The 6-week program is literally, we meet for an hour a week. You have access to text me and voice memo me and whatever throughout the week, but we meet for an hour of concentrated MFG time. And then during that hour, we write a song. And typically speaking, we complete the song within the hour. But if they want to do the 8-week program, we can then take one of those 6 songs. I can take it to the studio and we can actually record it professionally.
Very cool.
And then if that's not enough, there's the 10-week program, which then not only gives you the opportunity to record the song, but also make a music video from it.
Awesome. Both you and I bond over our values around prevention and reaching and trying to serve and support as many people as possible. And similarly, you also find it useful to not just work directly with the youth, but then also the people that are so impactful in their lives, their teachers, their parents, adults, and their lives, particularly in the workplace as well. Because if we're not in a crappy workplace, we're going to bring it home. Like that's just such a common experience. And then the kids get the crap end of it. And so that's something that you're also trying to address as well through your work.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, historically, even up until maybe 5 years ago, there was such animosity towards the concept of therapy, right? Mental health is a relatively new trend, which I love.
I know.
But my own mother is a counselor, has been a counselor my entire life. And so, I've seen people respond to that in a variety of different ways.
Yes.
But if we once lived in a world where therapy was not something to be celebrated or even respected, then it's not just a matter of looking at organizational mental health and wellness, but it's also recognizing that, no organizational business is an organizational business without its people. And if its people aren't healthy, happy, well-rounded human beings, and those people didn't have that, mental health and support when they were coming up, it just makes sense that the organization may not thrive as well as it could. So one of the things that I've been really enjoying, especially since my TED Talk dropped recently, is the opportunity to help organizations facilitate workshops and like team building with a difference, where, individuals are able to come together, express themselves and their different ways of overcoming trauma, or even just putting words to that trauma, and just like recognizing the humanity in their coworker, celebrating their creative expression, and almost identifying with that at the same time. So most recently, I conducted a workshop with the author incubator. Dr. Angela Lauria brought in a number of her coaches, and I did a short, TEDx style presentation before launching straight into a workshop for 2 hours, where every attendee walked away with at least a chorus and a verse of their own anthem, of their own truth, of their own journeys. And using that, think about it. Every film has that song that's like, the hero's here. Now these other people have these songs of like, this is my hero song. This is my hero's journey. Watch me roar. You know what I mean? Like, and so now they're able to show up for themselves, for their clients, for their workplaces in a way that's like, I may not be healed, but I'm on my way.
Yeah.
And with every step of being on my way, I'm able to show up a better, healthier, happier employee, director, manager, CEO. It doesn't matter. We all, health is the journey.
It absolutely is. It's not a one-time kind of fix that could be done in 1 hour or one second event or one workshop, but
Right.
sending that message like, this is just part of the journey and these are some tools to help you accomplish that. And in such a creative way too, that not a lot of people consider. When we talk about mental health and wellness, a lot of it comes to still really relevant, but a little played out. Let's diversify this a bit, but it's usually like, yes, we know we need to breathe. Yes, meditation helps. Yes, exercise helps. Eating healthy, sleep, music. Creating, playing.
Here's the thing though.
Yeah.
Because when you're writing music, it's almost like a set of meditation. If you listen to like Abraham Hicks or Marianne Williamson or Jim Rohn or I don't know, whoever, Steve Harvey even, they often talk about like this concept of alignment or there's like a number of different prayer, meditation, whatever.
Right.
When you are in alignment, that's when the songs come best.
Yeah.
And so my role as a coach is to help people of all ages, predominantly young people, to find the stillness so they can find an alignment and let their authentic selves out. And then, the words of affirmation come into play. You turn those words of affirmation into the chorus, right? And now that you've got this beat happening and the melody and everything's happening, now you're physically moving. So it's literally like everything that we historically, yes, we know that breathing is important. Right. Breathing is also important for singing.
That's true. Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It all comes together.
Yeah. Posture is really important for singing as well.
Yeah.
Our, moving around.
Yeah.
That endorphin, drive or whatever is, comes about when you're dancing to your theme song.
Yeah. There's just so much to it.
So I'm overly excited about
it. Oh, no, I love it. And it works on so many levels. I'm just so glad that you're here in our DC community.
I'm glad to be here too.
Working with our youth, working with our teens, helping parents connect their teens to this type of service. And then now in our workplaces, we know that DC organizations can definitely use a nice, fun break that's also very healing.
Yeah,
and so we appreciate you being here in our community. And we're going to have a whole page dedicated to all of your different services connecting to you. If you want to see the TED Talk and YouTube video from previous coaching client, see that music video. Is there anything else that you recommend for people to do in order to either empower their youth or engage in some self-empowerment?
Sure. Well, the easiest way that I can think is that there's two things. One, you can hop on a call with me to find out more about what I do. But if you are somebody who likes books, I do have a book called Reconnect Your Teenager, A Parent's Guide to Helping Your Stressed or Anxious Kid Through the Art of Songwriting. And I'm about to make that available on my website. But in the meantime, you can grab a Kindle copy or a hard copy from Amazon. Just look up Emma G, Reconnect Your Teenager.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Emma G, for being on our show today. We truly value and appreciate you.
Thank you, Dr. Alexis. Likewise. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Wit and Reason on DC Radio. Make sure to check out witandreason.com/DC Radio in order to access all of the resources we mentioned on today's show and to listen to some of our past shows. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and on social media, including some really fun YouTube videos with the handle Wit and Reason. Let's keep the conversation going.